Okay, welcome everyone. We are going to talk about building AI resistance and resilience, not resistance. We don't want
That's
resistance.
the other webinar.
We want resilience. So we're going to talk today about disruption with AI and then how you can become resilient. Feel free to ask questions. Kelly and Bill chime in. It's a small group today, so we can make it conversational. So I am Michelle Strasburger. I'm the CEO of HR Rebooted. We are building tools to empower organizations during this AI transformation. I'm very excited to have Bill Becker here. And Bill, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. I'm very excited to partner with HR Rebooted and Michelle and Kelly. So I am with AI Certs. AI Certs is a unique organization. It's a certification body on AI and how it impacts different job roles with a certification. So, um, how does AI impact HR? How does AI impact marketing, legal? Nothing else like that in the world with the certification. So it's just a perfect combination. Very excited to, be working with these guys.
We're excited to have you here. And Kelly, I didn't put you on the slide, but you're here. I'm happy you're here. Please do a quick intro for everybody.
Sure, sure. I'm the CTO of HR Rebooted. I'm Kelly Cunningham. And I too am looking forward to this partnership, really producing great results. And we're going to be talking about the tools, so we'll just jump into it.
Great. So I thought we'd start with a conversation. Feel free to add things in the chat or we can chat. There's a small group here. What are you thinking about AI disruption? I did a search for AI disruption and I did some investigating and it's out there, but I don't think nobody's putting a hard number on it. So I
I
don't
think
know.
there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of noise too out there. And so there's a lot of misinformation. I talk a lot about layoffs and how they get attributed to AI, and it's it's just not true. The layoffs, unfortunately, are real, but most of those are to appease Wall Street, to or shipping jobs overseas. The disruption is coming on tasks, which can be a good thing, right? Because if
Mhm.
you can free up 2, 3, 4 hours a week, that's a good thing.
Yep. Kelly, were you gonna say
yes.
something?
Yeah. So I mean, first off, we have to make sure that we understand what we mean when we say disruption. And we don't necessarily mean job replacement or people losing their jobs, even though that's definitely a possibility. But disruption can be really just the role is changing significantly because of what is going on with AI. And I think a lot of roles are going to be disrupted. I mean, exactly what that will mean for individuals is difficult to say, but the roles themselves are definitely going to be impacted by AI, and that disruption has to be managed, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's still a bit of unknown and we're still scratching the surface with AI. And so I don't think we really know the full impact of disruption, but I agree it could be just a portion of your role, right? And so for some of us that aren't great at the administrative pieces are very excited about getting rid of those or automating those or bringing in agents to take some of that off and think more strategically. But it does bring a lot of worry, especially in the workplace. And I had a study recently where it showed how many people are worried about AI or the AI anxiety in the workplace. And it was about 40%, which is a big number, but it's not like what you would expect. What I would expect is a lot higher on the anxiety front. But when you break down those numbers into the different generations, the baby boomers are less worried because they have most of them have less runway, right? A lot of baby boomers still want to contribute and be in the workplace, but they have less runway and they're not that worried about what the future looks like. But when you get into Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, that worry goes up. I think Gen Z, it's 70% are worried about what AI means for the future. And so I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think that's,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point about the generational divide. And obviously, if you're not going to be in the workforce for another five, or just maybe another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're not going to worry about it as much as if you're going to be in the workforce for another decade or longer, because I mean, the disruption, what you said earlier, we don't really know the extent of it, but we also don't know the extent of where AI is going. I mean, even that, the super intelligence AI and stuff, and what the additional impact that's going to have on the job market is also something that, is one of those big unknowns out there.
Hmm. Yep, exactly. Exactly. So what I found was interesting on disruption. So over the next 2 to 3 years, 50% or 55% of jobs in the US will be reshaped by AI. And so to your point, Kelly, it doesn't mean that your job is going away, right? But that it might change. And a lot of people ask me, do I think, because I have experience in human resources, do I think HR jobs will go away? And my answer is no, but I think they will change and they will morph. And there's going to be a bigger demand for strategic and thought leadership within organizations and really putting together the governance and the strategy on how we implement AI and then how we build the workforce of the future. So, and I think that falls true for a lot of roles in organizations that they may not go away, but they may be disrupted or reshaped. I like the term reshaped.
I think there's a tremendous, and because we're talking to HR leaders here, right? There's a unique situation where I always talk about there's this big bright light shining on organizations. They know they got to do something, and they're terrified of doing the wrong thing, right? I always use the analogy that you buy the wrong TV, you're out a few $100s, a couple $1,000. You make the wrong decision for your company, that could have some big time, consequences. But this is an opportunity for HR leaders to become heroes because you have the anxiety below you, obviously. The workforce, like, is this going to replace me? When you can talk to them and explain what really is happening, here's what's true, here's what's not true. And then your leaders are very, anxious because again, they're thinking, we know we got to do something. And smart leaders realize, even if they didn't approve it, AI is already in their company, right? So, um, the entry point is, HR. So with all this on your shoulders is also a tremendous opportunity for you to become a hero. Because if you can alleviate the anxiety below you and then help give peace of mind to your leadership, you are going to be, it's a big time way for you to get praised and um, shown, just how important HR is.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I do think that the statistic about 2 to 3 years, 50 to 55% of jobs in the U.S. reshaped. I like that word too. Uh, I I do think that what you have to ask, though, just looking a little beyond that, is how are they being reshaped? In other words, what does it mean? What will AI be doing versus what skills will people need to nurture, if you will, in order to coexist with AI within an organization. So, in one of those things that we at HR Rebooted we call those power skills, and those power skills are like critical thinking, creative problem solving, communication and persuasion, leadership. Those are things that we're not getting from AI, in which are going to be in terms of the human, in terms of value, that's where the value for human labor is going to shift from. It's going to shift from the mundane and repetitive tasks to the more influential power skills such as critical thinking and creative problem solving. So we have to be aware of that as well and make sure that the people who are being affected by AI disruption understand what it is, what skills they need in order to compete in that marketplace. And that's going to be really critical for them to make sure they nurture those skills.
Yeah,
I
that's a
would,
great point. I think that the bottom sentence I think hits the nail on the head with that is that the World Economic Forum projects 170 million new roles and 92 million displaced by 2030. And so there's going to be new opportunities and new roles. And so how do you, Kelly, to your point, maintain those power skills or develop those power skills so that you can step into some of those roles? So it's an interesting, I found that to be interesting data because we're always worried about disruption and jobs going away. And I think there's a bit of noise, to your point, Bill, with the layoffs in the tech sector because nobody's really pinpointing, is it AI specific or are they just using that as an excuse for layoffs?
I think one other thing to jump on what Kelly said is communication skills are going to become so much more important. And this is part of the new roles, and a new role doesn't necessarily mean a brand new role. It could be a hybrid, right? Because of the reporting capabilities and all the new things that AI can do, somebody needs to interpret that information and tell leadership. And so I think that's one of the, big time opportunities is to be able to, digest what AI is telling you, what's good, what's bad, and then, be able to explain that. So I see soft skills becoming even more important than they have. And probably, if we're being honest, our communication skills for all, as a general population is probably, kind of dropped over the years. I mean, we try to communicate with as few letters as possible, but speaking and good writing is going to become even more important in the age of AI.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. And this talks to that point, Kelly, right? The the power skills that are going to be needed is our critical thinking, emotional intelligence, Bill, to your point, the softer skills, creative problem solving, communication and persuasion, leadership and people management, data analytics, right? We can have the AI do the work for us, but we need to be able to interpret that and communicate that up, and project management. So there's a bigger emphasis on the strategic thinking, and there's going to be less administrative and tactical work, but there's going to be more for us to do to bring the human oversight and the forward thinking of AI impact to light. And so when we think about resilience, there are skills that need to be trained. And I think it's harder for those kind of getting out of school. So how are we doing that in organizations to bring college grads up to speed with some of these skills so that they can help work hand in hand with AI?
And on that first bullet point, strategic thinking, this should be the exciting thing about AI. So if you can, again, I mentioned earlier, if you can free up 2, 3, 4 hours a week because you're no longer doing these administrative, mundane tasks, now you get to use your, years of experience. I always love the term institutional knowledge. Those things make you a much more valuable employee. So in a way, AI gives you the opportunity for those who embrace it and understand, what's really going on to become a much better employee. And you think about this, everybody, you can't go 5 minutes and not hear those two letters, right? So everyone's thinking about it. And if everyone adopts it, where's the competitive advantage? And that's why you know, I love this partnership because it's the H in HR. It's still going to be the humans.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the future of AI, to that point, I really do think we're still scratching the surface with AI, and there's so much more we're going to be able to do with it in the future, right? We're using it. Most implementations of AI right now are just through chat. And so going into chat or any of the other LLMs and asking questions, But we're starting to see more AI agents come into play, workflow improvements with vibe coding and other tools like that. And leaders are going to have to shift in the future from just leading humans to leading human and AI resources. And how do we make sure that we have the oversight and the human element, right? And that in leading both of those different resources. And employees will be, if done correctly, creating their own chats, their own vibe coding, their own agents to help that. So you'll have much more innovation across your organization. And so becoming resilient to AI for AI means having that forward thinking approach. It means preparing yourself and upskilling yourself so that you can stay ahead of those things so that you don't get lost.
That's the part about becoming
Yeah,
a hero.
yeah. Well, Michelle, you've talked about that, and I don't remember the company in Japan that empowered their employees to like create agents and so on, and how productive, how much how much of an increase in productivity they received because of that empowerment. And I really do think, in addition to the power skills, that this is the empowerment of employees to really understand and utilize AI to its fullest is also an important piece of this puzzle that's getting rearranged.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I have a slide on something like that, Kelly. And so, just to give you some additional examples of why we need strategic thinking and why we need some of these power skills, Gartner had a study and they said by 2028, 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled because of costs, unclear business value, or inadequate risk controls. So, it's a really great example of why we need these soft skills, right? Why we need people to become more AI resilient, build some of those power skills, understand, Kelly, to your point, how AI works, understand the fundamentals and how it impacts your department and your organization.
When you think about it too, that in the old days, I would share because I come from the traditional IT training, business, and I would talk to a traditional IT training companies like, remember, when you made bank selling 5-day SQL classes, like, oh yeah, the good old days. Maybe 2% of the world even heard of SQL. The entire world is aware of AI. So, and then when they sent people off to those SQL classes, it might have been one or two people. The entire company needs to get AI ready now, regardless of what industry you're in. So again, those are, the challenges, but the opportunity, and those that embrace it, with good policies and everything, and make sure that their workforce is AI ready. That's where the H in HR becomes a massive competitive advantage.
Hmm. Yeah, and why do you have to get AI ready? I think this is a great example. We're still seeing adoption extremely low. I mean, on OpenAI, it's about 35% in organizations. And so to Kelly's point earlier, that company in Japan was called Tosei Corporation, and they led an AI implementation with governance, which means we're doing training, we're setting policies, we're teaching people how to use it and teaching them how to use it across the organization. So they're becoming AI ready in the organization and they're seeing 90% adoption with employees creating their own chats and other things. So it's really powerful. It's not just three of us standing here saying you have to do this because it's important. It actually makes a meaningful impact in the organization and can make a meaningful impact in your career trajectory if you are taking the right steps to build those power skills to become AI ready and become AI resilient.
Yeah, that's something I would comment too on these adoption numbers. I mean, the numbers don't really indicate how deep a company is into AI. In other words, how they really understand it. I mean, they might be adopting it, but they might not be adopting it in the right way, so that they don't have governance, they don't have auditability, behind what they do. So even though they're they may be getting some of the productivity benefits from it. And even that's a question in my mind. But they are definitely still putting themselves at risk if they're not using it without governance, for instance.
Hmm.
And just saying, hey, we got a Copilot subscription to everybody in the company. We've adopted AI.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, you haven't. You're off a good start, but that is the first baby step.
Yeah,
Right,
that's for
right.
sure.
And I think that strategic implementation of AI is so important at the front level. I have a friend, Megan, who I like to steal her quote. She says, "We're handing out individual tools and expecting team results."
Ooh, I like
And
that.
so it's really thought provoking because that's what we do. That's to your point, Bill. Everybody gets a Copilot subscription. Go and be fruitful. But we're not
Yeah.
training people. We're not training people how to use it, and we're not helping them because AI can help Michelle get better, right, at certain things, and can help Kelly get better at certain things. But how are we making sure that the team, the department, the organization is getting better together with it. And I think that comes down to how we're using the tool. It comes down to governance and it comes down to training.
Yep.
Read.
So we've said kind of all of this, but how do you build resilience through governance, right? Building that strategy, building oversight, operationalizing your governance in your organization, training. And I put retraining because what you learn today on AI could be fundamental. And then every time you do something else, you're incrementally learning. So it's like getting a new phone, right? When they first came out with the smartphones, we all had to learn how to use it. But now when a new update comes, we're not learning how to use the phone all over again. We're just learning the new features and the new updates. And so it's that incremental learning. And so AI is going to require that kind of continuous learning and I called it retraining, but it's really kind of doing that incremental learning over time as things change to stay ahead of it.
Well, and the previous side said adoption. There's another A too that adapting. So for those of you that are old enough to remember the year 2000 bug nonsense, that was a huge 2 year push. It's like, all right, great. 2000, we can move on. That's not at this. This will be continuing. And that's part of the retraining. That's part of, learning best use cases. That one department in your company could, discover a great, use case that goes to it's relevant to other departments. Same thing, smart people are going to, study what's going on in your industry. And it's like, ooh, we should take a look at that. So, yeah, there is this big push to get AI into the company, smartly, with guardrails and everything, getting the people AI ready. But you do all that in 2026, it's going to be a continued process. But that's good because you're going to find new ways to, be more productive, to cut costs, new revenue streams. That's the exciting part about all this.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was
I
one of the
remember
things I really liked.
Y2K.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Go ahead. You go.
I was just saying, I remember Y2K and I remember everybody waking up on January 1 going, oh, we're still alive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
Uh,
those old COBOL programs did not blow up. Yeah, I know. Yes.
Were you going to say something, Kelly?
Yeah, and now I'm trying to remember my thought here. So my old brain. Uh, so yes, I was going to say what I really liked about AI certs, in deciding to partner with you guys, Bill, was the fact that your AI training wasn't just generic. It was also there was also opportunities depending on, what vertical market you had, like legal or healthcare or whatever. You had specific AI training for those industries. I thought that was really critical in terms of keeping people, trained and up to date on what's happening.
Hmm.
well, that was that's what got me out of retirement, right? From last year. And I think, this kind of is a great segue to training. Everybody knows you can learn whatever you want for free on the internet, right? So if you're going to go out and teach yourself this AI thing, what would you do? Well, if you're smart, you would go look at case studies in your industry. If you're really smart, you go look at case studies of, other industries, because then you can go, okay, that's how they're doing it in manufacturing. This is how it would work in, retail. Then you go, all right, well, let's go look at some AI tools that people in my job role are using today. Oh my gosh, there are so many, right? But you could do that. You play around a little bit. You are legit AI ready. And always have a big dramatic pause. And I say, prove it. That is the beauty of the certification. Because, you know, so two different ways. For individuals, it proves that you're AI ready. So, to get a job, to get a better job. For companies, it's really important because they know this is not just like, oh, we got to get a handful of people trained on AI. No, your entire workforce needs to be AI ready, which at the very least, just AI literacy, right? Um, I'll skip the prompting one because Kelly says prompting's going away. But what's unique about AI certs courses, and that goes through our partners, they don't train on AI. They train on how AI impacts specific job roles. So the use cases and the AI tools in AI plus nurse, obviously different than AI plus HR or HR or AI plus legal. And so that's kind of the unique, proposition for our courses.
Hmm. To your Y2K statement, I've heard others refer to the AI disruption, like nothing's disrupted work so much since the Industrial Revolution. And I actually like to go back to actually nothing has disrupted work so quickly other than COVID. If we remember in in 2020, we were all working, one way. And then the next day, we had to completely change the way we work. And it completely disrupted the way work was done, the way performance was measured, and the way we actually interacted in our workflows. And it was overnight, and there was no handbook for it. We had to figure it out, right? And so, similarly to your point of just going out and researching and finding things, we have to, in order to become resilient, we need to take training and we need to really understand what are the pieces of my job and my workflow that are going to be automated, are going to be taken by AI, and how do I get ahead of that?
Yeah, and it's, again, the disruption is not brutal and overnight, right? I
Hmm.
mean, some of the things that have changed, everyone's seen, right? How many years have there been self-checkout lanes at the grocery store? I actually did just learn the other day, because my pet peeve is, there's 10 self-checkout lanes and only four of them are open. I never understood that, but I asked, and it's like, they still have to have humans oversee that. She goes, it's, four of those per employee. So she goes, it's just me and do that. But all to say, you can still have your groceries checked out by a live human. So those jobs aren't going, away overnight. If you go to, any website, there's going to be a chat bot that pops up that will do your best, will do their best, um, to, try to answer with, frequently asked questions and stuff. But eventually you may have to smack your monitor a couple times, but you can get to a live person. So the disruption is real, it's ongoing, but it's not just brutally, replacing everything overnight.
Yep.
So again, gives everybody the opportunity. All right, let's get going. Let's stay ahead of this. And then by the end of the year, we're going to be in a much better spot than we are today.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is a great lead in for training.
If I think we know somebody that can help with that. So yeah, just to go back. So the difference with AI certs is that, today there's 75 courses, and it's been going wide and then going deep now. But there's the fundamentals. So basic AI literacy. There is some prompting. There, executive level courses, and then you get into there's multiple executive level courses because again, leaders, chief AI officers, managers, they have their own anxiety and they're looking for ways to make better decisions and to know that they're AI ready. And then we do, there's technical courses there too, cybersecurity and cloud development and everything. But so we've been going wide, right, in different practice areas. And you can see up there, business and security and cloud and development. You started to go deep too. The best example is healthcare. It's not the only one, but for many months last year, we had, the anchor course AI plus healthcare. Today we have doctor, nurse, healthcare executive, assistant, pharmacist. There's more. And then that's happening in legal and marketing. And think about this. It's not being trained on technology. So we've always said we're vendor. We started out saying we're vendor aligned. Now we say we're vendor or vendor neutral. Now we say we're vendor aligned because there are courses out there. Microsoft, probably everyone's aware, you can get certified in Copilot and there's other certifications, AWS, but all those are being certified on technology. AI search courses are certifying whether or not that particular job role is AI ready. So, which makes it a little bit different on the courses. So 2 claims to fame, job role specific with a certification. And then also, we say multimodality, and this is the really exciting part because everybody likes to learn differently, right? So every course can be instructor-led or e-learning, virtually the same content, right? And when I say that, so if you take a 1-day course for the next 364 days, you have the exact same content as the e-learning. Obviously, extra value from having a live instructor, Q&A, but after that, you have the video lecture. So you watch, you have the ebook, you can read. If you're like me, I watch the videos with the closed captioning on. And then there's 2 audio components, traditional audio book. So one voice in your head, and then podcasts. Podcasts are unbelievably popular. We also say multi-device, so computer, tablet, phone. People are listening to lessons on their phone via podcasts while they're working out, walking the dog, doing laundry. You can literally go through every single exercise in the course. You have 4 different ways to consume that content. On top of that, there's also an AI mentor for each course. So think of it as a homework helper or, teaching assistant. And unlike a lot of, traditional IT certifications where you buy a course and you go buy an exam voucher, maybe go someplace else to do the exam, everything is built in. So the courses the exams are built into the course. You get 2 shots at it. You have access to everything for a year. Because it's AI, something probably will change, right? So we look at everything on a quarterly basis. And if something does get changed, the student gets an email and says, hey, Michelle, we added a new case study to your course. Or, hey, Kelly, we came across a new cool AI tool that people in your job role are using. Thought you should take a look at it. And you have, like I said, you have 2, a year to all that, 2 shots at the exam. Because people will ask at some point, yes, if you needed a 3rd attempt, you can buy an exam voucher then. But it's not like weeks of training. The job role specific, they're 1-day instructor led, 6 to 8 hours e-learning. For the technical courses, those are 5-day, 40-hour e-learning. But, really on what we're talking about here, job marketing, HR, legal, sales, finance, they're all, 1-day, 6 to 8 hour courses. So not a lot of investment on the time side. And for companies that realize, hey, this investment to get our entire workforce AI ready is not going to be insignificant. How do we know we got, a return on that investment? First question, did your folks get certified? And then I'm going to tee this up nicely. One of the things I was so excited about, when started talking with HR Rebooted last year. So I've done my own HR webinars over the last year and a half, and training is a huge component of this adoption, right? So HR is a logical entry point, but in the Q&A, it's always like, hey, we get this bill, makes sense, but what about governance? What about acceptable use policies? How, some guidance on, to help, you have all these courses, but to help decide who gets what. That was the beauty of partnering with HR Rebooted.
Yeah, that's great. I also love the idea of being able to do a specialized course. So if I'm in customer service an individual level, and I know that, a lot of that is going to go away or be heavily disrupted, I can take AI for marketing and learn about marketing so that I could grow out of customer service into a different role.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, again, and this is anything in life, right? If you're just gonna, get by and just say, all right, now I feel kind of secure. The people that look at this and go, this is going to spring me to a much better career. I
Mhm.
mean, this is the it's kind of been a level playing field, right? No longer that, oh, you got to have a degree or all kinds of experience and all stuff that, AI is a tool. And, we've talked a lot about the good and the things to be concerned about. But those that who really embrace it, not just embrace it a little bit, this can be life changing for you. And not just because of, you know, AI search courses and the things that you're going to learn about here in a minute from HR Rebooted, just as an overall concept, that there are some exciting opportunities here for people to better their lives.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great. And I do, or I am curious to see in the future if organizations will require it. So in HR roles, there's HR certifications, and in those job postings, they're requiring the HR certification either through HRCI or SHRM. And so we might start seeing AI certifications as being a requirement for the job. That's my wager.
And even if they
Yeah, and one
don't, if they're looking at two people that relatively are the same, the one that's certified in AI in that job role versus not, I mean,
yeah, that's yeah for sure. I mean, one of the really nice things about the synergy between, you know, HR Rebooted and AI Certs is that the front end of our product, if you will, the My Career Navigator, it helps you identify where you might want to go from your current job if it's going to be disrupted. And but that's just the beginning of the process. You have to understand, okay, I want to go from this job to this job, and you'll in using our tool, you can understand what's the disruption, possible disruption of the new job you might be interested in. But once you settle all that out, you find the career you want, then naturally the question of training comes in. Okay, where do I take it from here? And again, that's where the synergy comes in. You can identify what you might want to do, and then you can start preparing for it, start building your resiliency by taking the additional training you might need in order to enter that new job that you want.
Mhm.
So that's a really great synergy.
Yeah,
agreed.
absolutely. And so I'd love to introduce my career navigator. You're all getting a sneak peek into it because we are officially going live tomorrow, but you'll be able to go in and use it. I did put the link in the chat, but I'm going to pull that up and show you real quick. But this gives you the opportunity to really be proactive about your career, what's going to happen with disruption. And we encourage you to to take the challenge. All right, I'm gonna do it. So you can sign in with an account, or you can just go forward. If you have an account, you can come back and see where you are at any given point in time. So when you get to the homepage, it's mycareer.hrrebooted.ai. You can just jump right in and start the assessment. And so it will ask, what's your role? I'm going to say human resources manager. Gives you a little bit of information about the role. And then it asks a little bit more about your education level. So I'm going to say I have a master's degree. I've got, oh gosh, I'm not going to say 28. I'm going to say
You
11
started
years
when
of
you were 7
experience.
years, right?
Yeah.
And if I have 11 years experience, let's say I'm 32. And it's going to ask a little bit about your company. All of these factors play into AI disruption. And so I am going to say 51 to 200 employees, and I'm in technology. And that's it. That's all the information you have to put in there to really understand your disruption risk. And so this is what it's telling you. So over the next couple of years, there is a chance that AI is going to take some of my role, right? But because of my experience, and we'll look at that, and my education, that number is decreased because I do have some of those power skills we were talking about earlier. Over 5 years, though, that number does increase, and you can look at longer term scenarios to see what that looks like. And these numbers will change over time as the data starts to pull in some additional information. So it's great to come back and look at this on a regular basis. And then we can say there's these factors, like I said, that are affecting your risk. So your role, my experience, my degree, and the industry that I'm in. Tech industry is quicker to adopt AI, so there is a bigger risk being in that industry. And then it kind of goes into what are the things, like, the routine tasks are going to be automated, which is what we talked about before. And then we move into AI resilience, and it's going to make me create an account, which I have. Okay, it's not letting me do it. There. Oh, now I gotta check my email. Bear with me. This is just so you could come back and review the data again. And if you do decide to do training.
Yeah, it also blocks you though from at a certain point where you do have to you can't do everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Now I'm in. I have my account, which I should have done in the beginning. And so it tells me my score and my skill, and it recommends the skills to develop. Since I'm in human resources, AI usage in the workplace, and some additional ones, and then some, here's things that I can continue to develop on the power skills in order to get better. I can then edit my skills. So I've just gone and picked some. So my AI knowledge is either none or basic. And then I've got, some of my power skills. Where would I rate myself on those? And that's where you get this information on your skills gap and your AI resilience. And then I can say, okay, well, my risk is moderate, but I want to become a human resources, let's say, specialist. And so it tells me if I'm going to transition to a human resource specialist, my risk changes. So it goes down, and I could see a salary change or salary increase. And these are all based upon some of the data in the labor of bureau statistics. So it could change based upon your location and years of experience and other things that you bring to the table. But it's kind of general dollar amounts. And then it tells me if I'm going to do this, what the costs would be if I'm going to go to school, my living expenses while I'm at school, my potential income loss, and then the total estimated cost, what the ROI looks like, and here are some skills you can develop. And this is where the integration with AI certs is really powerful, because if you wanted to take the AI training for that, instead of going back to school, you can click on that and go through the AI certification process. If you wanted to
Okay.
also check out uh, what are the other career pathways that I can
Yes.
look at and what's the risk, you can go low, medium,
Hi,
high.
how are you?
Hi, Maria. Thanks for joining. So you can see the low risk jobs, and you can kind of click through and understand which jobs are going to be low risk for AI disruption.
Yeah, I mean, if you just you know your job's in being disrupted severely, and you're not exactly sure what else you might be interested in, you might just go into here and put in what Michelle just did, the low risk ones, and then you could just kind of like go through the low risk ones, see if any of them interest you, and then if they one does, then you can pick it, and you could have some confidence that you would be changing careers into something that was not going to be as highly impacted by AI as the current role you're in.
Mhm.
Exactly. You're being proactive, which is so important because, we talked about this whole thing has been about change and disruption. And there's real and there's nonsense out there, but it's in the end, and this has always been true, to a degree throughout history, those that put in more effort usually get more rewarded. It's just going to be intensified, um, you know, by a huge magnitude because of AI. I hope
Right.
Yep,
intensified's a
for
word.
sure.
It sounds great.
Okay, I'll Google it when we're
Um,
done.
and you can look through, if there's specific areas that you're already in or have experience in, you can look through all of these different categories as well. And then the AI training. So you can look at any AI training. To my point earlier, if I'm in customer service and I want to move into another part of the organization, you can look through here and say, I want to take, Bill said AI executive. You can see the chief AI officer, practitioner, and executive fundamentals. So if I want to develop my skills and move from an HR manager to an HR executive, I can take these and be able to show that I've got that skill set.
This is so
I actually
cool.
think this is a big area too, that people are going to be companies are going to be needing chief AI officers, and they're going to come to realize it. And if you have the skills, you're going to be positioning yourself, I mean, in a way that's very favorable to becoming an AI chief officer.
Hmm. Absolutely. Anything you want to add on this on the training, Bill?
No, I just think it's unique, which is what, is very exciting about it, that oh, I've got to learn, a new technology. And one of the things in the courses, so I had mentioned that, you got a lecture. And so there's a lecture at some point. It's like, let's go look at case studies about how AI is being used in your industry today. A little bit later in that lecture, it's like, let's go play with some tools that people in your job role are using today. You will not become proficient in those tools in a 1 day class, 6, 8 hours of e-learning. You do get your hands dirty though, because the idea is at the end, you go, you know what? I saw 3 or 4 tools during that training. I want to go spend more time with that one. And on top of that, every course has an addendum of 10 to 20 other tools that we've curated and think, you think maybe you should go take a look at these. So we've kind of already done the thinking. It's like, we get it. We gotta, I gotta figure out how AI is being used in my industry. And I need to, learn a little bit about the AI tools that people in my job role are using today. So we've already done that part for you. And there's great exercises to go through. As I said, different ways to consume the content. You can watch, you can listen, you can read. And then as you go through each course, there's little self checks to see if, hey, all right, are you good to go? on to the next module. At the end of the course, there's a completion certificate. Never had that in the beginning because it was always about the exam. But completion certificates have become more important because they're being used for continuing education credit, right? The exam badge, and we make it very easy. When you pass the exam, 90 minutes, probably don't need the 90 minutes. 50 questions, you got to get 35 right. But when you pass the exam, you click a button and that badge you can put up on LinkedIn. And so you'll see those all over LinkedIn that people go, I took AI Plus Executive and I am AI ready. So make it very easy for you to tell the world that you are AI ready.
I love that. I like the badges.
Yeah.
That's great. And then the other thing you can do is build a resume. So you can upload your resume. If you have it only on LinkedIn, you can download that PDF and upload it here. You can generate a resume. And then once you do, I've already gone through and generated one. You can refine it using AI. So down here, if you want to change anything, you would just type it in and it would change it for you. So you can keep this. Another value add to creating an account and putting your email and password in there is that you can keep this and update it at any point. And with just asking AI to make that update. If there's a job description, so your job description or a role that you're interested in, you can generate a job description, upload that job description. So if you're interviewing for another role, you can upload that job description here. And the importance of that, you can then analyze it and you can do an interview practice. And so you can say, okay, I want to do a written interview or a spoken interview. We'll do written and it's going to be beginner, intermediate, or advanced. You can start with beginner, do it again at intermediate, and do it again at advanced so you get more practice. And then you would start the interview and it would ask you a question. And then you type in your answer and it will evaluate the answer. If you do the voice, and so it says, yeah, this is all based upon my resume and the jobs that I'm looking for. So you have experience in maintaining HRIS data accuracy and adhering to strict confidentiality standards. Can you share an example of that time? So there's behavioral interview questions, which you will face in a real interview, and you can type your answer and submit it. Or in the voice one, you can speak your answer and submit it. So you get comfortable talking about it.
This is so
And it
cool.
will analyze your answer.
Yep. Yep. And it'll analyze your answer and say, you weren't very clear on the specific example or things like that. So you get that real-time feedback, which you don't get in a real interview, right? You get the interviewer just nodding and saying, okay, next question. You don't really ever get the feedback, so you don't know if you're doing well or not. This gives you the feedback. The other great thing is that you can retake the assessment. And so if you say, okay, I'm really curious about like this role, or if this was, a role in my organization, we're worried about disruption, you can retake the assessment and pick another job. So you're not tied to that one job that you put in.
And you might also want to retake the assessment because this data changes. I mean, the data is the most current data that we have from like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Gartner, and we keep this data up on a monthly basis and we refresh it, make sure it's current. But if you take it and then 3 months later, the profile for your job may have changed, and you might want to just retake the assessment just to see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Just like retraining, you have to come in and check it. And this is a great way for you to take control of your career, even in your organization, and see what's going on with AI disruption or reshaping, right? It doesn't have to be that your job will be eliminated. And that's the nice thing about seeing the percentages and the risk factors.
And I think that plays right into what I said, after you adopt it, you're going to adapt it. So this is not just a 1 year deal that, the big lift for leaders and individuals is immediate, this year. But then to stay AI ready, this is why this, Career Navigator is such an awesome tool. And it offers some pretty good AI training with it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So the My Career Navigator is free for you to do the assessment and walk through. if you go into if there's training that excites you, there is a fee for the training, but you can go through and do all of the pieces. But the training, as Bill said, gives you that credibility in the marketplace. It gives you the experience and the ability to be more resilient. So I invite everybody to take the My Career Challenge. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or anything else, Kelly or Bill, you want to say, please feel free to add it.
I know everyone's busy. I appreciate your time. If you're listening to the recording, appreciate you signing up. Um, this is truly just an amazing, combination between our two companies, and it was worth the many months of continuing to engage with Michelle and Kelly.
Yeah, it surely was. We're super excited about my career and about this partnership. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us on LinkedIn. You can also reach My Career Navigator at www.mycareer.hrrebooted.ai. And so please feel free to check it out and share it with your friends.
Yep, please spread the word. It's a very useful tool for all the Gen Zs and millennials and everybody else worrying about what's going to happen with their future with AI. It's really going to be a useful tool.
Great. Doesn't look like we have any questions, so we'll sign off. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you,
Take
Michelle.
care. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
Bill.